A trailblazer, a fearless warrior, a giant of civil rights. Some of the tributes paid to the US civil rights icon Jesse Jackson, who has died aged 84. Mr. Jackson was a key figure in the fight against racial discrimination in the 1960s and later became highly influential in party politics.
We want to be heard as blacks become more assertive in foreign policy. We reserve the right to challenge given positions.
A trailblazer with a commitment to equality and human rights, Jesse Jackson became involved in politics at an early age in South Carolina and rose to prominence as a civil rights campaigner. Inspired by Martin Luther King Jr., he joined his Southern Christian Leadership Conference and was there when he was assassinated in Memphis in 1968. Jesse Jackson continued his pursuit of social reform. As he moved from activism into the mainstream political arena, he became the focal point of black political power. He ran twice for the Democratic Party's nomination for president in 1984 and 1988.
This campaign has taught me much, that leaders must be tough enough to fight, tender enough to cry, human enough to make mistakes.
Decades later, Barack Obama hailed Jackson for paving the way for his victory when he became the first black president. In 2011, Jackson was interviewed on the RTE programme Spirit Level, and he reflected on those who had fought for civil rights over the years but never lived to see this moment of Obama's victory.
The people who made it possible were not there, and I wished they could have been, and I felt I was embodying their spirit as I cried.
Jackson had 6 children. In 2017, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. His family said he died peacefully this morning. In a statement, they said, "Our father was a servant leader, not only to our family, but to the oppressed, the voiceless and the overlooked around the world." Tributes to Jesse Jackson describe him as a mentor, a big brother to a generation who shaped public policy and changed laws, and who left an indelible mark on history.
Well, let's speak to our Washington correspondent, Sean Whelan. Now, Sean, tributes across the board for Reverend Jesse Jackson. How are people remembering him?
Well, they're remembering him as a huge figure in American politics in the second half of the 20th century in particular, especially in the Democratic Party, which is the one he had entered and made his mark on running, as you heard in that report, twice for the nomination to become the presidential candidate of the Democrats, falling short on both occasions, but leaving a legacy there because he changed the way the Democratic Party selects its candidates, getting a proportional representation system through, which many people are now crediting with clearing the way for Barack Obama's successful run for the nomination and ultimately for the presidency. It was this whole question of, could a black man stand for president of the United States? Well, Jackson's campaigns really did open the way for Obama to come along later. So that will be one of his enduring legacies in there. The tributes have been flooding in, as you say, as you'd expect from across the Democrat Party, but also from the Republicans, and led by President Trump, who said he knew Jesse Jackson for many decades, had indeed provided his Rainbow Push organization with office space in the Trump building at 40 Wall Street, again for many decades, described him as a person with grit, with street smarts, but also a gregarious person, somebody who was a very warm personality. So the president leading the way on those tributes for the Reverend Jackson. He did act as a bridge, really, between the two great eras of black advancement in America, the civil rights era of Martin Luther King, and he was there on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel moments after Reverend King was assassinated, right up to the election of Barack Obama and those famous photographs of Reverend Jackson shedding a tear as the Obamas came onto the stage, the first black Americans to become President of the United States. So although he didn't make it himself, he definitely cleared the way and left a huge, huge mark on American politics.
Washington correspondent Sean Whelan, thank you.
More now on the death of the late Reverend Jesse Jackson. Earlier, I spoke to Professor of African American Studies at Princeton University, Eddie Glaude, and began by asking him about the impact of Jesse Jackson on the civil rights movement in America.
Oh, he was an important figure in so many ways. The youngest among Dr. King's inner circle, in so many ways translated the Southern Black freedom struggle to the North. He was a fascinating, charismatic, young, energetic organizer in Chicago. Was able to talk to those folks who were embracing Black power, kind of merged those two elements in his own kind of prophetic witness. And then, of course, as he got older, he took Bayard Rustin's idea of from protest to politics very seriously, and moved the civil rights movement in so many ways into the orbit of democratic politics. And in many ways, because of that, changed the very face of the Democratic Party. And he did that also at the same time that he had this international reach. It's really important for us to understand his role in the anti-apartheid movement, the way in which he helped release hostages in Syria, Iraq, Gambia, Yugoslavia. I mean, we can go on, Serbia rather, but yeah.
And his impact on politics in the United States. He ran twice for president himself, unsuccessfully. But did he pave the way for others? Would there have been a President Barack Obama if it wasn't for Jesse Jackson? Absolutely not.
Jesse Jackson's campaigns in '84 and '88, they were different kinds of campaigns, but, resulted in a fundamental shift in the Democratic Party rules. Prior to that, in the context of a primary, it was winner take all. You had to get 20 to 30% of the vote in a congressional legislative in order to get a delegate. Jackson forcefully changed that rule, pushed for the change in that rule, reduced it to 15%. He argued against white primaries. He argued against gerrymandering and a range of things. And it's because of those arguments that you had the long-term impact that led to the possibility that Barack Obama could win. Because if those rules hadn't been changed, Hillary Clinton would have wrapped up the nomination fairly quickly, I believe. So, yes, he's played a significant role in changing the politics. Plus, he changed who mattered in American electoral politics. The Rainbow Coalition was important. He reached for coal miners in West Virginia, poor white folk in Appalachia, Black folk in the Black Belt. He put forward an economic agenda that took seriously the vast diversity of the nation, and it had an impact, it seems to me.
He was a Baptist minister, a gifted orator. He really knew how to speak to a crowd.
Oh, my goodness, yes. I was 15 years old. I'm from a small town in Mississippi. I was a special delegate of the Mississippi Democratic Party. I was at that '84 convention on the front row. And that's the convention where Mario Cuomo gave his famous Tale of Two Cities speech. There were arguments and fights among the Jackson delegates and the Mondale delegates, the Gary Hart debacle. I was there for all of it. And I just remember that speech that Jesse Jackson delivered. I was spellbounded. I mean, it was the most amazing political speech I had ever heard. And the way in which he brought truth to the table, the way in which he brought our tradition to the table. I happened to bump into him in an elevator afterwards. He towered over little old me, and he gave me such affirming advice to step into my dreams and to become who I was called to be. It's an amazing man.
Just finally, can you sum up what his loss will mean to America? What will be the legacy of Jesse Jackson?
Well, I think a lot of what we've talked about in terms of transforming our politics, I think his ongoing witness over the so many years that he was involved in the movement. But I think right now we have to grapple with that legacy in light of the country's ongoing betrayal of everything he fought for. So Reverend Jackson dedicated his life to really making America a multiracial democracy. And here we are in the moment of his death, the moment in which he took his last breath, and we have forces that are hell-bent on rejecting that vision. So we need to draw on the resources he's leaving behind and continue the fight in our own time.
Professor Eddie Glaude of Princeton University, thanks indeed for speaking to us on 6-1.
Thank you.